The next type of transformation in topic 3 are glide reflections. A glide reflection is a composition of a reflection followed by a translation in a direction that's parallel to the original line of reflection. So this means we're just going to have more than one type of transformation to create a glide reflection. This type of transformation completes our 4 rigid motion options. Remember, a rigid motion maintains distance and angle measure. So far we've done reflections, translations, rotations, and now in 3.4 we'll work on glide reflections. Looking at the notation for each type of rigid motion, it's important to recognize the type that we're looking at. We can do a reflection, we can have a translation, wanted that in orange. We can have a rotation where that's X number of degrees. But then look at this, everybody. For glide reflection, it has to have 2 parts to it. Remember, it's going to have a reflection and a translation. But here's the thing. When you see it in this order, you actually do the second part first. So that's the first type of transformation. And then whatever's written first, I know this is kind of weird, you actually do second. So what this glide reflection means is we reflected over line M and then translated it 4 units to the right to get to ABC prime in orange. As we go through our examples, the first thing we're going to do is just cross off example 1. This is actually more of a translation than it is a glide reflection. Go ahead and cross this one off and we'll go to the next example. Looking at example 2, it says this is a composition of what types of transformations? Well, transformation capital T takes the PQR in black to the PQR prime in blue. So notice that isn't a reflection and it isn't really a slide either. So that has to be a rotation. The transformation T from PQR to PQR prime is a rotation. So then take a look at transformation S to go from PQR prime to PQR double prime. So from the blue to the red. It looks like that is a reflection. If we draw in a line, kind of like right here in the middle, see how R goes to R prime, Q goes all the way over to Q prime, and P goes to P prime. So that S is going to represent a slide or a translation. That would be applying I was going to try to spell and talk at the same time. That would be applying a composition of transformations or a glide reflection. Now down below, we're going to take a look at how to create that more specifically. As we think about creating these types of glide reflections, we really have to visualize 2 things happening from our pre-image to our image. For example 3, go ahead and cross off the part B on the right-hand side. We're not going to utilize that. It says, is there a rigid motion that maps triangle ABC to ABC prime? There isn't just one that will do the trick for us. So we can't just reflect it or just do a translation or even just do a rotation. None of those would actually work. But what we can do is create a glide reflection, which is that composition of 2. Now what we need to figure out is how can we go from one to the other? Well, if we want to reflect first, we could reflect over the y-axis and watch what that will do. If we take each component of ABC and reflect it over the y-axis, A prime would go over here to the right, B prime would be up here at the top, and C would be straight down from it. So that's reflecting over the y-axis. So if we do that first, we're at least getting it to look close to what ABC prime actually is. So reflect over the y-axis. Then to get it to drop down below, notice we would count, let's see, from A to A prime, we'd go 2 to the left, so -2, and down it looks like -5. So if we did a translation, remember we always do the x value first, the y value second, left 2, and down 5, that would take A to A prime, B to B prime, and then C down to C prime. So that's kind of the process behind how we get there, but to write it out, it needs to even be more particular than that. As we write this out, remember whatever happens first is actually written second. So this has to be written, well, hang on, sorry. This has to be written second in that composition. And this one has to be written first. So how do we do that? I'll show you. If the first thing is a translation, we're going to say capital T. And then remember we use those arrows. Left 2 would be -2. Down 5 would be -5. So that's the translation. And then we do that open circle, and we saw open circle before. And then if the first thing we did was reflect over the y-axis, we're going to say capital R sub y-axis. There we go. That's the notation. And then what we do is we take the pre-image and we put it in parentheses. So we're just going to go triangle ABC. So this is the notation for the glide reflection. Well, this example looks just like the last one. Let's see if we can come up with a different way to generate that composition to create the glide reflection. Now, if we start with ABC, I notice we could even move the shape straight down and then maybe reflect it to get to the red. If we move it straight down, we would want A to match up all the way in the same row where A prime is. So that would be down 5 units. But I don't want it to do anything else. I don't want to slide it over at all. What if we just say go down 5 units? Let's try that. That would be a translation of 0, -5. If we move A, B, and C just down that 5 units, A would match where it's currently, that point's currently located. C would go here, and then B would just be up above that 3 units. There would be a translation or a slide down 5. Then we need to figure out how can we get A to map all the way over to A prime, C to C prime, and B to B prime. Can you tell where that line would have to go to reflect it? I think if we draw it right down here through the middle, that's a vertical line, so that would be a reflection, and that's a vertical line where x equals -1. And that would reflect the green dot for A over to A prime in red, B up top to B prime, and then C over to C prime. So here's kind of an alternate way that we could create this glide reflection. If the reflection is done second, we actually write that first over x equals -1, and then the composite of the translation, 0, -5 of triangle ABC. Glide reflections are a little tricky to generate, but they just create another type of transformation on your graph. Our last example in the video will be example 3. Quadrilateral RSTV has these 4 vertices. Use the rule T10 and R x-axis to graph and label the glide reflection of RSTV. Let's first plot those 4 coordinates and connect them. It should look something like this: R, S, T, and V. Over on the left-hand side, I'm going to rewrite those values and kind of create a table to generate my glide reflection. Pause the video and copy this down on your paper. I just took my pre-image values and then recognized for the glide reflection that we're actually going to reflect over the x-axis first. Then we're going to take those values and translate them 1, 0. When we're done, that will be the image under the glide reflection for RSTV. When you're done copying this down, press play and we'll continue with the rest of the problem. To reflect over the x-axis, notice the rule: we just take the x-coordinate, leave it as is, and the y-coordinate change the sign. That means R prime is going to be at -3, -2. S prime would be at 0, -5. T prime, 4, and then +4. And then V prime, I notice I forgot that parenthesis there. V prime would end up at 0, 2. Go ahead and plot those 4 image points, connect them, and that will be RS TV prime. And if you connect those points, your graph should look like a reflection over the x-axis. The last thing we're going to do for this glide reflection, I know this is taking a while, the last thing we're going to do is just bump everything 1 unit to the right. Since 1 is positive, we're going to add 1 to x and not change the y values at all. That means R double prime will be at -2, -2 if we add 1. S double prime will be at 1, -5. T double prime will be at 5, 4. And then V double prime will be at 1, 2. All right, our final plan here is to just plot those 4 points and connect them. And there you have it. It gets kind of messy on here, so hopefully we don't do too many of these for practice. But a glide reflection, again, is just a composition of 2 rigid motions that create that new transformation. And those are the notes for the video for 3.4.